met John Lennon after the Attorney General, Mr. Mitchell, under Nixon, and especially his wife Martha, wanted to get Lennon out of the country because he was effectively protesting the Vietnam War. And so they started exportation proceedings on the basis of his hash having been, a small amount of hash being found by a Scotland Yard policeman who was so determined to get the Beatles, he worked free weekends. He just went doing his work to try and get, well, he finally, John said they never kept any hashish where he lived. They wouldn't do that, and that this was planted. Be that as it may, John was convicted. He didn't have to serve any jail time, but the conviction was there, and it was on the basis of this that the trial was undertaken. And there were only three witnesses, Dick Cavett and, can anybody remember the name of the head of the Metropolitan Museum in New York at that time? Well, whatever his name was. No. They were there to testify to the cultural contributions that Lennon had made, and it would be against the interests of the United States to do this. I was there to testify about marijuana, and Leo Wild's account of this, in fact, I spoke to him recently because it's not accurate. What happened was that on the witness stand, the prosecutor asked me, well, now, as you know, Mr. Lennon was convicted on a hashish charge. And Dr. Grinspoon, hashish, and see, the law in the United States doesn't mention hashish. They hadn't heard of it. They mentioned marijuana. So he asked me, Dr. Grinspoon, just to clear up the first fact, hashish and marijuana are the same thing, aren't they? And I said, no. Now, you know, I have to say, I felt I compromised a little bit there because, you know, if I behaved like a pure scientist, I might have said, they're different, but here are the things they have in common. They're made from the same, they do, and so, but I just said no. And I figured, hey, if the government wants to bring out the close relationship, they're going to have to fish for it. So I'm not going to do their work. So I was astonished. He said, they're not the same? No. And he was dumbfounded. That was his whole case. He went to the judge. They conferred. There was another. And this went on and finally the judge said the government had dropped its case, and we walked out of the courtroom. And it was then that I knew a little bit about what it must have been like to be a Beatle in their head. We walked out of the court. The word got around Manhattan or wherever the court was, and people, by the time we came out of the court, these girls, these savage girls, came after John and Yoko, and I was there. And then the police were holding them back, but John and Yoko had autographed record for my two oldest sons, then David and Danny. And they could see that both John and Yoko had signed. They got close enough. That's an autographed record. And wow, they came after me. Or I should say, the records I had. We had stopped by the Apple offices. They picked me up in the morning at the hotel. We had stopped by the Apple offices on the way because they were going to take me to the airport afterwards, and we were just, well, the records were, I tried my best to hold them up, but they were ruined. And so we went by the office again and got them again, and then, now, the night before, I had dinner with John and Yoko, and I was telling him about my first marijuana high, and how one of the things that reassured me that this, the third time I tried, was really the real McCoy. I heard on the you don't say hi-fi anymore, you say the sound system. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Band was playing. Now, I had actually physically heard this. David, how many times would you say you played that while during, huh? At least 200. While you would always tell me, Dad, get your head out of the Baroque and listen to Jerry Garcia and the Beatles so forth. And I never heard them. I started to hear them that night. That music was like an implosion. And then there were a few other things that four of us trying to eat a Napoleon standing up in the kitchen. And you know, you eat a Napoleon, it compresses and the gooey stuff goes laterally and will drip on the floor or whatever it is. Mary, where did you get this Napoleon? It's delicious. Only to hear from Mary, well, I got it at such and such a bakery. Well, it wasn't the first time we had Napoleon from that bakery, so I knew. And then the third thing that helped me to appreciate that, here was I, a addicted left lane driver, was driving home in the Mass Turnpike in the right lane, the slowest lane. And even that was too slow for people who would get out of that lane to go. And I was quite happy, both hands on the wheel. And finally, it seemed interminably long,